Today, I'm speaking with the Ambassador of Ukraine to Estonia, His Excellency Maksym Kononenko. The ambassador is preparing for the upcoming Global Peace Summit in Switzerland on June 15th to the 16th. And this interview is part of an effort to draw the attention of the global public to topics relating to creating a sustainable and secure peace in Ukraine and about Ukraine's vision of ending the Russia-Ukraine war. Welcome to Silicon Curtain. Please like, subscribe, and definitely add a comment. This is an incredibly important topic. This is a very important video, so please do share it around your network. And if you can, discuss the contents with people who are interested in Ukraine and who support Ukraine. Even please do outreach it to people who may have been influenced by Russian propaganda narratives. This is incredibly important to counter those. Maksym, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for your invitation. It's very important for me, and I'm really glad to be here today with you and to discuss these really important topics.
Well, before we hit record, we were talking about solidarity between countries, and we know that Britain has shown solidarity with Ukraine. Our material resources aren't necessarily sufficient to support Ukraine fully in the manner I think some of us would like, but other countries have also shown this leadership and solidarity, especially Estonia, where you're based. How important is it that countries like Estonia take a real lead, countries that understand the Russian mindset?
I can talk about Estonian solidarity and leadership for hours. But the point is that the importance and place of a country often do not depend on its size or population. And there are other factors that make country really visible on the world map. And this is exactly the case of Estonia. In Estonian case, it's political leadership. And for them, it is an inexhaustible resource that Estonia skillfully employs. And it's very important that they show this readiness to be first, to demonstrate unwavering political will to achieve and the set goal. So, of course, thanks to Estonian leadership, the Shell coalition, Orange coalition, and IT coalition for Ukraine have been created. So, Ukraine victory strategy for 2022-2027 has been unveiled. Estonia has decided on long-term strategic support for Ukraine as well at the level of 0.25% of GDP over the next 4 years. So it's a very important step. If every country takes the same commitment to provide support for Ukraine at the level of 0.25 GDP, it would help us to win this war as soon as possible. So, but of course, a very important point and very important political initiative is to create a compensation mechanism, because we understand that the end of the war is possible only after justice restored. The guilty of international crimes must be punished, the damage caused by Russia must be compensated, and especially to Ukraine, and especially by using frozen Russian assets. But justice, one more time, doesn't exist in vacuum. So there must be someone who will take the leadership, who will be the first to show the way. And this is the case of Estonia. Recently, Estonian parliament adopted a law on national compensation mechanism, and President of Estonia, Lord Kari, signed this law. And this law creates a mechanism to use Russian frozen assets to compensate Ukrainian to compensate the damage caused to Ukraine. So, of course, we will see how this legislation will work in reality, but finally it is very important green light, not only to Estonia, but to all the European Union and European countries in general, because by this they are creating a very important precedent.
And of course, this peace summit is aiming to build upon that solidarity between the majority of European countries. We know there are some exceptions, but the Peace Summit is an initiative of President Zelenskyy. What is the aim and the structure of it, and what is the intended impact of this event that you're participating in?
We clearly understand that the path to true, lasting, and just peace today lies through the battlefield. There is no other option. And to achieve it, Ukraine must win. But victory doesn't equal peace. And peace will be established only when the nuclear energy and food security are ensured, when all prisoners and deported persons are exchanged, when the justice is restored, when the territorial integrity of Ukraine will be restored, and war crimes will responsible for international war crimes will be punished. So, in anticipation of victory on the battlefield, we are already working on this with a coalition of friends and partners in support of Ukraine. And together with Swedish partners, we are organizing today the first peace summit for Ukraine. As you mentioned, it will take place on 15th, 16th of June in Switzerland. And of course, summit will be built on previous discussions that have taken place over the past month in the format of national security advisors, Copenhagen, Jeddah, Malta, Davos, and we have already sent invitations to more than 160 delegations, and we really count on their participation in this very important international event. We have invited all leaders who respect the UN Charter, and they are ready to implement principles of this very important international document. But to summarize, first peace summit for Ukraine is aimed to three main goals, has three main aims. First, to provide a platform to discuss various visions of the peace process. Second, to give a high political start to prepare a joint peace framework which could restore peace in Ukraine. And finally, jointly defined a roadmap how to involve all parties concerned in the future peace process.
And what is the ideal outcome for Ukraine from this event? What actions and decisions are you hoping will be made by the end of the summit?
We understand that Russia will not sit down at negotiation table to speak with Ukraine on equal terms. And we have already been down this path. More than 200 rounds of negotiations in various formats have ended in nothing. Russia, as always, has continued to speak the language of ultimatums, which is unacceptable for Ukrainian society. However, we clearly understand that even aggressive Russia has its limits, and it cannot speak the language of ultimatums with the entire international community. So our task is to transform the President Zelenskyy peace formula into an international peace formula, gain global support, and bring Russia to the negotiation table on the terms of the international community. The result of summit should be ideally a plan for the implementation of this international peace formula. How it can be achieved? A set of diplomatic conferences, roundtables, consultations, seminars in different countries at ministerial, parliamentary, expert levels will be conducted after the first global summit to discuss and to finalize this plan. And each conference will be devoted to the specific issue, to the specific stream of the peace framework. For example, nuclear security, food safety, exchange of prisoners, and return of Ukrainian children. And based on the results of these discussions, of these thematic conferences, a joint peace plan should be elaborated.
And it's difficult, isn't it? Because without Russia's cooperation, in fact, without regime change in Russia, it's very difficult to see Russia becoming a negotiating partner, even in a period of peace. So Ukraine is very much reliant on partners, on other countries, in order to enforce restrictions on Russia, in order to enforce this peace arrangement. And if that involves, taking keeping sanctions going, or using Russian exports and taking a percentage in order to provide reparations. This is very important preparation, isn't it? Not just for wartime, but for a potential peace.
Of course, but we should keep in mind, we should always remember that Russian attack, Russian aggression is not directed solely only against Ukraine. This Russia is undermining, Russia is questioning actually the existing legal rules-based international order. So it is attacks again everybody, every country which is devoted and committed to the UN Charter. So the response should be joint. We should find a common response to this Russian aggression. And that's why Ukraine is trying to involve in this exercise as many countries, as many members of international community as possible, to create a joint platform, joint framework for this peace process. So this is the idea, actually. If they attack against the international community, so this is up to international community to respond to this attack.
And of course, another challenge is that China is not taking part. For some time, there was hopes that China may play a more constructive role. It seems that their peace plan is very much an alternative to Zelensky's, very much more aligned, I fear, with Russian objectives. How damaging is the behavior of China, and can it be described as obstructive?
I can say that the Ukrainian side has done everything possible to engage China in dialogue and work on this peace formula, on the peace formula of Ukraine. And President Zelenskyy and many other high-ranked Ukrainian officials have tried to establish contact with China. Chinese leader Xi Jinping received an invitation also to the first Global Peace Summit. So we did our utmost to involve China in these discussions. Unfortunately, Ukraine doesn't have any powerful political connection with China today because China doesn't want them. So Beijing decided not only to refrain from the participation in this peace formula summit, but also to help Russia in discrediting it. And I can only refer to the words of my president spoken at the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore. And Volodymyr Zelenskyy clearly expressed our disappointment that Russia using influence, Chinese influence in the region to disrupt the peace summit. And this doesn't correspond actually to China's previously declared intentions to facilitate the resolution of the armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine on the basis of the respect for the principle of territorial integrity and to help to bring peace back to Ukraine. So there is a kind of deep disappointment by the Chinese stance. Nevertheless, we always keep a hope that China will come back on the track and will be active partner in the elaboration of this international peace formula, because we think that Ukraine is a victim of the first victim of this Russian aggression. And it is up to Ukraine to propose and to establish the framework for peace in Ukraine. So we do not expect and we do not accept any other peace plan for this conflict. But what we are looking for is for active engagement of all international actors in the elaboration of the peace international peace formula for Ukraine, and first step will be made in Switzerland.
And you talked about China trying to disrupt the proceedings in some way and discourage countries which it has influence over in attending. Do you also expect there to be a campaign of disinformation from Russia? And we've seen in the last couple of months that China has started amplifying Russian propaganda narratives, and clearly there is some kind of coordination there. Do you expect a very active campaign to try to draw attention away from the peace summit?
It is already happening. And of course, Russians are not very happy because of the fact that we didn't invite them to this first international, first global peace summit for Ukraine. But we understand very clearly that the sole Russian aim is to block this summit, is to block the peace process, to impose their own vision of so-called geopolitical realities. So at this stage, we cannot allow Russia to undermine this initiative. At the same time, we understand that on a certain stage, reaching peace would need the involvement of the representatives of the Russian Federation. So Russia may be invited for the second peace summit, but before we should agree on the framework of this negotiation process and on joint international plan for the peace in Ukraine. Only at this stage Russia can be invited and can be part of this process. Of course, we see when Russia is not invited, when Russia is not participating to impose one of the ultimatums, to impose their will, Russia is doing everything possible to undermine this summit. And as my minister said last week, Russia, Minister Kuleba, Russia is using three types actually of opposition. First, it is discrediting the peace summit through sending letters, public statements, closed meetings, and Russia is trying to convince other countries not to participate. The second attempt is to persuade individual countries not to participate in summit at all. So, and third attempt is to convince countries that have already confirmed their participation to come at the lowest possible level. So we see that Russia is doing its utmost to undermine this summit. And the problem is, unfortunately, that we see that China is helping Russia to spread these messages, to spread this disinformation about summit, and to convince other countries not to come, not to participate. So for us, it is clearly proves the exceptional importance of the Global Peace Summit for Ukraine. And if Russia deploys so many systematic efforts to undermine it worldwide, so it means that it is important.
Yes, they only expend resources on things that are real threats, don't they? There's a certain strategy behind that. You could add potentially a fourth strategy to Russia's armory, and that is to use countries that are part of these processes or part of international institutions, but then they use them to undermine those processes and institutions. We can only think of Hungary and its role within the European Union, blocking, various legislation to support Ukraine. Are you worried at all that there are any participants in the peace conference who may try to block or distort or put alternative ideas forward at the behest of Russia?
It can always happen, and we understand that different countries has different interests, but we believe that the most important interest of all countries is to bring peace back to Europe, to the European continent. And we hope that this interest will be the determinating in the position of these countries. Of course, Russia will continue to identify so-called partners and use their presence at the summit to undermine the summit and this initiative from inside. But I think that the main goal, the main aim is much more powerful, it's not actually, to be honest, it is not summit about Ukraine. It is summit about peace. And we understand that if this conflict is not finished, if this war is not over, it will be spread all over the world. This is history doesn't teach us, but it shows some examples. So that's why we believe we really believe that the interest in bringing peace back should be more important than to pursue some national interests in this case. We will see how it will happen actually, but I think that we should keep it in mind that it is summit about peace, about respect to the international law, about the upholding the United Nations Charter.
And of course, Russia is unfortunately part of the Security Council of the United Nations. It's part of that institution, and yet seems to have little regard for the structure of international law. If Russia is to be invited to a subsequent peace summit, would it have to demonstrate that it is genuinely got some kind of interest in peace and some kind of constructive proposal towards it? Because at the moment, it seems that they have retooled their economy, their society, their media, and their whole governance is geared around war and aggression. Do you see any signs that that might change in order to allow them to participate in a future forum?
We have here two parallel tracks. And as I have already said in the beginning, the path to the peace lies through the battlefield. And we understand that only defeated Russia will sit and will talk in good faith about peace conditions. So our main as Ukrainian state is not only to protect our territory, to restore our territorial integrity, but to defeat Russia, to make Russia unable to wage the war against Ukraine and other neighbors. So, and for us, it would be the best possible condition to achieve peace for Ukraine and in Europe in general. Because, but at the same time, we cannot wait the end of this war. We should do something. We should already work on the framework of future peace. What we see now in Russia, and of course, we always keep a hope that the situation will change and maybe future democratic Russia will be able to negotiate on equal terms and to achieve an agreement. But what we see now, that it is not actually Putin's Russia, it is Russian Putin. Because it is Russian deep state, which have created Putin and this kind of system and this kind of leader. This is Soviet Russian deep state, which have not been destroyed after the end of the Cold War, which has not been punished after the end of the Second World War for these horrible crimes committed by Soviet regime. So this Russian Soviet style deep state continue to shape Russian policy, Russian aggressive foreign policy toward neighbors. So that's why, unfortunately, we understand that there is a small chance that Russia will stop it, but the more chances that Russia will discuss peace after being stopped. So, and it is, for us, it's clear. That's why we are saying that we have two tracks. First, our defense military track, and Ukraine continue to resist and to fight on the battlefield. But at the second, the second track is also important, try to find common ground for peace and maybe prepare these peace conditions for the future, whatever this future will be.
And this is an interesting point, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you've got peace, the idea of peace. Unfortunately, in some people's minds, peace means surrender to Russia. Peace means giving up deterrence and not showing force. But there's an alternative idea that if you want peace, you need to carry a big stick and show that you're willing to use it at the right circumstance. So is it impossible to think about peace without also thinking about force, the willingness to use force to stop Russia, stop authoritarians, stop aggression, stop violation of sovereign borders?
You are completely right. And example of Ukraine shows it very well. Unfortunately, during very long time, we perceived our country as a bridge between West and East. We were just facilitator of contacts, and we thought that it can work. Actually, we gave up our nuclear weapons for so-called political commitments. We didn't work to develop our army because we were sincerely convinced that we do not need strong army in the modern world. So Ukraine was, how to say, very pacifistic in this regard. And unfortunately, we see what has happened. Ukraine has been attacked at the moment when Ukraine was the most vulnerable during civil discussions and civil protests against regime of ex-president Yanukovych. So, and it was completely unexpected, even unimaginable for many Ukrainians in 2014. But it happened, and it is it is stark reality we are facing now. So, and we have been working very hard since 2014 to develop our armed forces, to prepare ourselves for the next round of unfortunately of the conflict, and it happened. So now we see that if you want peace, you should prepare yourself to the war. It's unfortunately it's evident. So we have no illusions, and we will never ever surrender and accept Russian conditions of so-called demilitarization, because we understand what will follow. Actually, it will be extermination of Ukrainians. It will be the end of Ukrainian state. It will be the end of Ukrainian nation, and we are not ready for this. So we will fight till the end to protect our country and our people.
And another challenge, of course, is because Ukraine is a democracy and has been on a path of increasing, transparency and development of civic society and all these kind of things that have happened over the last 30 years. But it's a particular challenge, isn't it, facing an issue like mobilization? It's very similar, in fact, to the issues that were faced in other democracies historically, such as Britain during the Second World War. What do you do in a free society where your survival depends on potentially forcing some people who don't want to fight to actually put on a uniform and fight and kill when it's a matter of sheer survival? And of course, Zelensky has been dealing with this in a very sensitive way, and in some ways, I know there has been criticism that mobilization has taken too long to go through the Rada. It's been too slow. Now it seems that issue is being tackled. But what are the sensitivities and challenges in a democracy of needing to potentially go for mass mobilization to match what Russia is doing?
First of all, I have to say that there is no simple answer to this question. Mobilization is touching the very essential interests of every person in Ukraine. It is about life and death. So there is no simple answers to such kind of questions. And it is very boiling, it is very hot, burning question in the Ukrainian society now. I have to say that there is, from one side, there is moral and legal obligation of every Ukrainian citizen to protect his or her homeland, to protect the country, and we have to respect, to stick to this obligation, because otherwise Ukraine will cease to exist. From other hand, as a democratic state, we cannot just take and send all these people to the front line for a real fight. So these people have to be trained. These people have to be equipped. They have to have necessary clothes. So there is a lot of very pragmatic, very technical challenges when you want to mobilize people. And our legislation of mobilization was outdated. It was 30 years old legislation. It was not shaped and envisaged for this kind of full-scale war. So it took us a while to update it. And now new legislation has been adopted by the parliament. People have to renew their data to allow the Ukrainian state just to understand what is the mobilization potential, on whom we can count to protect our country. And so after that, our general staff, together with Ministry of Defense, should make an assessment. How many people do we need on the front line in the armed forces? How quickly they can be trained, in what way, equipped, and so on. So it is difficult technical questions, and we are now trying to respond, to give an answer. It's not easy. Sometimes there are situations which should be fixed because there are so many categories of Ukrainian citizens abroad, and legislator was in hurry to adopt this legislation, and this legislation is not perfect. So it should be adjusted to the different categories of population abroad, to take into account the differences. But in general, it was a right step which has been made by the Ukrainian leadership. This step is not easy. When you are talking about taxes, it's not easy, but when you are talking about mobilization, it's much more harder, I would say. So now we are on the right track. And I know that our government is working hard to prepare additional pieces of legislation which will clarify law on mobilization, which will provide different instruments how to make it work. So, but it's necessary for the survival of the Ukrainian state. There is no doubts here. So we should take sometimes difficult decisions when dark times are coming.
And there are other challenges on the horizon this year. And obviously, I don't want to ask this question in a partisan fashion, but there are definite risks from a whole range of elections that are taking place. Of course, we have the UK election coming up. The risks perhaps from that are minimal, given that all the political parties in the UK are strongly pro-Ukrainian. Maybe there'll be some subtle differences in details, but generally that's the lowest risk election taking place. But there are European elections, there's the election in the US, which perhaps presents the most existential risk. How is Ukraine able to influence not the outcomes of these, but prepare for different eventualities from these elections, especially the US one?
Democracy is the worst way to govern, but nobody invented something better. And being democracy, Ukraine fully understands what is the procedure, and we fully respect the right of every country to hold these elections. So we are not afraid of this process and of the outcome of this process. Because Ukrainian case, it is very clear case. It is clearly understandable who is aggressor, who is the victim, who is on the right side, who is waging war, actually, and undermining international rules-based international order. So in our case, everything is very clear, and we are not afraid of the fact that because of the election, political stance or political attitude of some countries will change. But the main fear, actually, it is about the fact that these elections can slow down the assistance provided to Ukraine. So, and this actually last months, the end of the year, the beginning, the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024 showed clearly that it can be harmful for the Ukrainian defense. And for us now, it's important to work with all political forces, with all political parties, to explain to them that you shouldn't slow down the assistance, the supply of assistance and military assistance and help to Ukraine, because it's not in your interest. And actually, we feel that we enjoy the wide political support in many states. And for example, the United States, we enjoy this bipartisan support, and we are grateful to both parties. And we will work with any democratically elected American president. So we are respecting choice of American people, British people, all other nations. But what we are trying to do now is to convince them not to slow down, because it can have very dire consequences.
Of course, during elections, things tend to slow down. I mean, there's no legislation passing in the UK. In fact, we don't have any MPs until the election takes place. There's a period where essentially, the country is ungoverned, except the civil service carry on running the show. Ukraine has been under, since 2014, one could argue actually a lot earlier than that, but since 2014, Ukraine has been clearly under assault by Russia, and that assault happens over a number of different fronts. It's physical, it's economical. Now, of course, it's targeting exports, grain, energy infrastructure, but also informational warfare, grey zone warfare, penetration of the administration, the security service. Russia is constantly trying to plant its agents and assets. Ukraine, to an extent, is at the bleeding edge of freedom and innovating various techniques to be resilient against aggressive autocracy. What can Ukraine teach the world about how to survive and how to be resilient in these circumstances?
Yeah, you are completely right. Russia is doing everything possible to undermine Ukrainian resistance and to attack actually not only Ukraine, but the whole West. So they are using different tactics, different techniques. And if now in Ukraine we see this hard military conflict, Russia is attacking all other countries actually by cyber means, by disinformation and by information attacks, by sending their spies, by bribing and so on. So it is more soft instruments, but you shouldn't have any illusions. Russia is trying to penetrate everywhere, to undermine democratically elected parliaments, form democratically formed governments, and it's real war against the collective West, against Ukraine first, of course, but against collective West. There are so many provocations For example, last provocation on the Narva River against Estonia. So they are trying to undermine the whole international system and to show that the NATO is not efficient, to show that the European Union is not able to deliver. So they are trying to show it, to do it all along the line of the conflict. And what would be Ukrainian experience here? I think that first of all, it is to stay strong and not lose your connection to the reality. Actually, we were given 3 days before the fall of Kyiv, but now it is third year of Ukrainian resistance. And it is because we do not lose our hope. We do not stop to believe in our country. We remain solidar among Ukrainians. Of course, we are facing many challenges as mobilization, but the solidarity inside Ukraine is of very high level. And I think that you do not have any illusions about this conflict. It will not disappear itself. It will not just, as it was said, Russia will not stop until it is stopped. So Russia is an empire, the last empire on the European continent. It is in the nature of empire to enlarge itself, because empire doesn't have borders. Empire have limits, and where these limits will be, it depends on us. So don't have any illusions about this, that it will be Russia will stop achieving some kind of result. No, it will not. So we should remain mobilized. We should remain motivated. We should remain committed. We should continue to show this solidarity. This is maybe our receipt of survival in this situation. So I don't know what advice to give. It seems to me that everybody should learn his or her own lessons from this situation, and may to learn to draw conclusions and to prepare ourselves for the next round, because it's not the end of the conflict.
Exactly, and you know, the self-organizing qualities that we see in you know, many civic society institutions in Ukraine, I think is a lesson of how we can renew our own democracies as well. And of course, this peace summit is an important part of that process of educating countries, leaders, diplomats in this new reality, this post World War II order. Which is sort of broken down, and the new order isn't quite clear, except that we see involves a lot of aggression, and it involves rearming, and it involves a return to maybe a more 19th or 18th century version of politics. The last question here is about the individual policies that are going to be discussed in the peace summit and the conditions for peace, which I think are very important. And three, which it seems to me are absolutely critical for Ukraine's survival as an independent state, as a secure independent state in the future, is the return of its sovereign territories, the return of the stolen children, and the return of displaced Ukrainians abroad, which will only happen when there is security. Are these the three most important for you, or are there other conditions for a stable peace that you will be discussing in the summit?
Actually, this summit is based on the discussions of security and foreign policy advisors. And these discussions were held on the basis of the President Zelenskyy peace formula, which is composed of 10 main points. And it is, of course, about food security, nuclear security, about displaced person, about exchange of prisoners, but also it is about justice, restoring the justice. It is about respect to the international law, United Charter, and the principle of territorial integrity. It is about ecology as well. So there are many, many things, but it's impossible to put all this on the agenda of the summit just technically, because you know, it's huge exercise to bring together more than 100 leaders of the different countries and international organizations. And from just technical organizational point, it's impossible to discuss all points of the formula of the President Zelenskyy formula. So we, in cooperation with our Swiss partners, we made a choice, and we put for the first summit, we identified 3 main topics which can be the departure point for this discussion. It is nuclear security, and especially the case of Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which is under Russian control, and it's very dangerous. Second, it is food security, because it's not about Ukrainian agriculture, it is about hunger in African and Asian states. And of course, it is about prisoners of war, civilians, and especially about Ukrainian children which were deported to the Russian Federation by force. So these 3 main topics will be discussed at the summit, at the upcoming summit in Switzerland. But it doesn't mean that all other points are less important, or that we will abandon these points on the road. No, it is not the case. We will, after the first summit, we will work on all tracks. We will organize conferences, discussions on all points of President Zelenskyy formula. And I hope that the outcome of these discussions will help to put the real sense, the real meaning in every point, in every discussed topic, and we will come to the common understanding of the situation and common joint peace plan for the international community. But to kick off, we need to be concise. So we decided to focus our attention on 3 main topics.
That's incredibly important. It sounds like this is an absolutely pivotal event and an important time of the war as it enters its 3rd year. Maksym, I'm so grateful to you for joining the channel and for sharing these insights into the event. Again, I'll repeat, people should share this video, share their thoughts of it, and get involved in the event that is happening. You know, follow coverage of it, and make sure that they reshare any details from it on their social media. I think it's incredibly important to raise awareness of the event and the issues discussed. And I'm so grateful that you are able to include our audience into this incredibly vital discussion.
Thank you so much for this meaningful discussion, and for your professionalism, and for putting this very important topic on the spot, and drawing the attention of your public to this very important topic. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you so much.